Sarah, guess what? It's Tuesday. First things first, I apologize for the mess. Things are a bit disorganized right now because things are up in the air, and you just have to deal with that. Second of all, I'd like to apologize for the I'm buttoning up a button. Leave me alone. I look like a porn star. Know how you get the views? Clickbait. Now that I've blinded and scarred half the audience, let's actually kick this thing off, shall we? Okay, so the thing I'm going to talk to you guys about today is LARP. We got LARP in mind. LARP is kind of what happened last weekend, so let's just delve into it and talk about LARP. Specifically, not just LARPing, but LARPing as a way to improve your ability to empathize and a way to improve your ability to understand other people. That's actually the same thing. I really should have said empathize and leave it at that because I just repeated myself and I sound like a big dumb. First things first, LARP? What is LARP? If you know what LARP is, good for you. You should not have to listen to me explain what LARP is. If you don't know what LARP is, try to imagine it as D&D without the dice in real life. If you don't know what D&D is, I don't know why you're watching this channel. It's kind of a big deal. It's gonna come up a lot, and you should do some research. Now, moving on from that, the thing I want to talk to you about today, specifically with LARP, is the importance of understanding character. This is an important thing when you're trying to establish a personal character in LARP, and actually this can be applied to most forms of roleplay games. I'm using LARP as the base example because it's what I'm most familiar with, and it will help cement the argument as well as kind of pitch LARP to you. So the thing you may be asking yourself is, why would I want to LARP? It's a bunch of people walking around a field in costumes, grown adults more often than not. It's expensive. It sounds silly. Yeah. So LARPing is all about taking a character, building a persona, and acting as that character in any given circumstance. And at first, this can seem like a lot of hard work. People spend years and years and years in school learning how to properly improvise. Meanwhile, you're asked to go to a LARP on your own time, and you can already kind of see how this is going to be a bit of a challenge. So when I say you have to go to an event, can last from as little as a whole night to as long as a full week in some cases, acting as this persona, you can imagine how that would be exhausting physically, not only that, but mentally as well, because you have to rationalize things not as yourself, as another person. Why is this an important trait people need to learn? This is a very practical skill for people to learn, learning how to empathize with another person and learn how to feel how they feel. Not only that, but learn how to think like they do. Thinking like a different person entirely takes us a lot out of our comfort zone. It takes us a lot out of who we are. Taking a second to stop and think as a different person entirely, though, can be very difficult. And this really comes through when you have to play a villainous character at LARP. It can be very easy to say, I want to play an evil character who's evil for the sake of being evil. That's not hard. And unfortunately, people who play characters like that come off as very superficial. The more interesting characters to interact with are the ones who do things that we view as evil, but have very, what's a good way of phrasing this? Characters who have very strong motive and very strong belief that what they're doing is the right thing. When a person is doing something that they believe is the right thing, even though we all agree that it's the wrong thing, morally, ethically, lawfully, doesn't really matter. If we view something as what they're doing is wrong, if they view something that they're doing as right, learning how to empathize with those characters who are doing something that's so different from what we view as right and wrong is a real challenge. Playing those characters is a great exercise in empathy. You learn how to see things through a different lens, you learn how to understand things a different way, and you learn to kind of understand why people are doing certain things. People don't do morally wrong things in real life thinking, I'm doing the evil thing, ha 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 ha. Those characters only exist on Saturday morning cartoons, where it's very black and white for what's right and wrong. Learning how to understand why someone's doing something that we view as wrong, while they view it as doing something right, is really, really hard. It pulls you out of what you normally think of, it pulls you out of what you normally consider, and it really makes you question a lot of your own moralities. Why is it that I view this as right and wrong? Why is it that I respond to this as this way? Is it just because it's a different view, or is it because it is a view that is outside of the social standard? The social standard being its own weird little box that I'm sure I'll delve into on another day. Going to LARP is a wonderful example. Actually, frankly, any role-playing game you can play where you take upon this character persona and you can view these things as differently is a great exercise. It's something that I encourage everyone to do a little bit on a regular basis. You will learn to understand things in a different way, you'll learn to understand things in a different light, and you'll learn to appreciate other people's viewpoints more. Let's be honest, trying to appreciate someone else's view when it's starkly opposed to ours is very, very difficult. I know when I was younger, I used to hear things that people said that didn't agree with my preconceived notions, and my instinct was to say, you're wrong, even though I didn't know why, and more often than not, I was the one who was wrong because I was an ignorant sot. We as people grow when we challenge these preconceived notions and preconceived thoughts and force ourselves to look through the world in a different lens. It's the only way we can cause our character to grow. Elsewise, we find ourselves locked in our own bias, and when you're locked in your own bias, you don't grow as a person, you actually diminish. You get so centrically focused on what you already know as right or wrong that it doesn't challenge you to think at all. And when you don't think, your brain gets fat, and that's not the good fat. That's like the bad fat. That's like the fat that you have liposuction for. It's like mental liposuction when you're thinking differently. That analogy got away on me a little bit. I'm sorry to everyone who had to hear that. Taking this back to why you should roleplay, even if it's not at a LARP. This is a wonderful exercise. This is something people should really consider doing more often. And this is why I strongly think that activities like this should be more readily accessible for people. Yes, LARP is weird. I am no stranger to that concept. I know that myself getting dressed up in my medieval clothing, carrying around a foam sword, running around chasing monsters, swinging numbers, really what it is, it's weird. It really is. But at the same time, the importance isn't so much as what is perceived. The importance is what is gained from it. And I can say that I myself, anyway, have grown a lot from my 5 years of LARPing experience. But the important part for me with LARPing is that I get out and I learn to appreciate things in a different light. Where you're, as a character, not thinking like yourself, but thinking, how would this character feel? The way that a patriotic, law-abiding citizen feels about one action is going to be completely different to a self-serving person whose only real goal is to line their purse. Not that either of these viewpoints are necessarily wrong. They're different viewpoints on how you should live or how you choose to live, I think is a better way of phrasing that. What is right versus what is wrong. Right and wrong is very hard to define. When you were a kid, you looked at and said, that action is clearly wrong. Like the person who steals a loaf of bread. Well, that's wrong. They stole. They stole a loaf of bread because they have no job. They have no means of getting a job. The system is rigged against them. And the only way they can feed their children is to steal a loaf of bread. Is that still wrong? Yes and no for you as a person listening to that. It's going to be different from person to person. And having an example where you can take upon that persona even for a few hours and learn to think as that person really helps you learn to empathize with people who are going through a hard time, empathize with people who have made a bad choice, and empathize with people who have lived with certain difficulties, challenges, as well as just you learn. Really is the best way to, I think that's the best way to break it down, really. You just learn. It's another way to learn how to people. Peopling as the verb. Learning how to see a world differently than you normally see it causes you to understand another person better than you could have elsewise. And to really learn how to understand another person, how to kind of pull yourself out of your own headspace and sympathize, I think is a better way of wording that. Take yourself out of your headspace and learn to think like another person. Any instant you can try to do this, I think, is nothing but beneficial for you at the end of the day. I don't think there's really anywhere else I can go with that thought. I'm sure I've got more thoughts in the back of my head. This was an entirely unscripted episode. I just kind of spoke from what was going on in here, what I was feeling in here, and I just kind of blah. So hopefully this all came together in some sort of conducive way. I know they didn't really have much of an ending there. It just kind of petered off. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you can leave your thoughts on similar instances. Agree, disagree. The point isn't to agree with me. The point isn't to disagree with me. The point is to talk about it and to learn. Just a reminder, some other stuff we have going on. We still have that survey going on for keeping everything on one channel. This was mentioned in the Janby News channel. I'll put a link to that in the thingy below, as well as I'll put a link to the survey in the thingy below. Feedback on things the channel can be doing better, things we're not doing as well. We're looking for what we got. We have an email in the About section, so feel free to shoot us off an email if you think we can be doing something better, think we can be doing something differently. If you have any ideas for us, even if you just want to say hi. We're always good to say hi. Sarah, I'll see you on Friday. You're upstairs. I'll see you in like 15 minutes when you come down to laugh at me for this take. Yep. I think it's a wrap.